The storyteller welcomes you to another nightmare. Plug in your earphones, close your eyes, and let us begin.
Have you ever wondered what secrets your neighbors might be hiding behind closed doors? What if the quiet man next door, who seems harmless, is actually involved in something far more sinister? This is the story that haunts me to this day. The reason I move away and the reason I can never look at antique dolls the same way again. After hearing this, maybe you won't either. It all came to a terrifying head the night Mr. Abernathy moved away. I watched from my window, heart pounding, as he loaded the last of his boxes into an old van. His porch, which had been cluttered for months with dolls, was suddenly empty. No more glassy eyes watching me. But as the van disappeared into the night, I realized one doll was missing, and I hadn't seen Mrs. Callahan, my neighbor across the street, in over a week. Let me take you back to the beginning. When Mr. Abernathy first moved in, he seemed like any other quiet, elderly man. He kept to himself, rarely spoke, and spent his days wandering his overgrown yard. I paid little attention at first. Life was busy enough without worrying about a new neighbor, but soon deliveries began. Trucks arrived regularly, unloading boxes, old trunks and crates. I assumed he was an antique collector or dealer. Then the dolls appeared. At first, there was just one, a porcelain doll about 2 feet tall, placed in the middle of his porch. Its faded pink dress and tangled hair gave an eerie look, but it was the eyes that unsettled me most. Bright, glassy, and unervingly lifelike, they seemed to follow me every time I passed. Within a week, 3 more dolls appeared. Each looked older and more worn, but strangely more human. Their faces weren't the usual painted smiles. They seemed almost alive. One night, while taking out the trash, I saw Mr. Abernathy gently brushing the hair of the newest doll. He caught my eye and smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I quickly turned away and went inside. As summer wore on, the dolls multiplied. Then I noticed something chilling. Every time a neighbor moved away, a new doll appeared on Mr. Abernathy's porch. At first, I thought it was coincidence. But then I saw a doll that looked exactly like Mr. Jenkins, the old man from across the street, who had left suddenly. Same bushy eyebrows, same chipped tooth. I tried to dismiss it, but when Mrs. Callahan disappeared without warning, a doll appeared the next morning with gray hair styled just like hers and glasses perched on its nose. I felt sick. I tried to convince myself it was my imagination, but deep down, I knew something was terribly wrong. I began watching Mr. Abernathy more closely. He never left the house during the day, but at night, I'd see him moving from room to room, sometimes carrying dolls, sometimes just staring at them. Once, I saw him talking to them in the dark, his lips moving silently. I called the police, but they dismissed my concerns. He's just a collector, they said. No law against dolls. But I couldn't let it go. I started keeping a journal, tracking the dolls, the neighbors who vanished, and the eerie connection between them. One night, I gathered my courage and crept into his yard, hiding behind hedges. The porch was crowded with dolls, all facing the street. I swear as I moved, their heads turned too. My breath caught in my throat. Suddenly, a light flickered on inside. Mr. Abernathy appeared in the doorway, cradling a new doll. This one was different. Its features so lifelike, I could see tiny veins in its hands and a faint blush on his cheeks. It looked just like the woman who had lived across the street until the previous week. He set the doll down, adjusted its dress, and whispered something in its ear. the doll's head tilted slightly toward him. Terrified, I stumbled back and ran home. The next day, I decided to confront him. I knocked on his door, but there was no answer. The house was silent. I circled around back and found the basement window cracked open. Against my better judgment, I climbed inside. The basement was dark and cluttered with boxes and old furniture. But what caught my eye were the shelves. Hundreds of dolls, each more lifelike than the last. Some were missing eyes or had cracked faces, but all stared at me. I moved deeper, flashlight trembling, and found a workbench covered with tools, scraps of fabric, wigs, and something that looked like human skin. I gagged and stumbled back, just as I heard footsteps above. Mr. Abernathy had come home. Panic surged through me. I scrambled for the window, but it was stuck. The footsteps grew louder as he descended the stairs. I hid behind boxes. Holding my breath, he entered humming softly, picked up a doll, and began sewing something onto its arm. Horror struck me as I realized it was a tattoo, the same tattoo Mrs. Callahan had on her wrist. I was frozen, unable to move or breathe. I watched as he finished, cradled the doll, and whispered, "Perfect, just like the others." He turned, and for a moment, I thought he saw me. But he only smiled, set the doll on the shelf, and left. When the house was silent, I forced the window open and ran home, locking all doors behind me. The next morning, Mr. Abernathy was gone. The porch was empty, the house dark. A moving van sat in the driveway, and by noon he had disappeared, taking every doll with him. No one saw where he went. The house sat empty for weeks, then months. Eventually, new tenants moved in, and life went on. But sometimes, late at night, I think I see a face in a window. Sometimes, I hear a soft humming, just like Mr. Abernathy's. And every so often, a new doll appears on a porch somewhere in town. I never saw Mrs. Callahan again, or Mr. Jenkins, or any of the others who vanished. The police found no evidence, no bodies, nothing. But I know what I saw. I know what Mr. Abernathy was collecting. And sometimes when I close my eyes, I see those dolls, hundreds of them, staring at me from the dark, waiting, watching. So if you ever notice a new doll on your neighbor's porch, one with eyes that seem just a little too real, don't look too closely, because sometimes the things we collect us. Before we move on to the next story, if you like true scary stories, please subscribe to Storyteller and click the bell icon for more creepy tales every week. Did you ever hear a noise so strange, so unsettling, that it made your skin crawl and your heart race? Yet when you tried to find a source, there was nothing there? That's what happened to me. And it all started with a shed. It was a stormy night, the kind where the wind howls like it's trying to rip the world apart. I was standing in my backyard, flashlight shaking in my hand, staring at the shed next door. The door was cracked open just a little, and I saw it, a dark stain spreading across the wooden floor inside. Something sharp glinted in the dim light. Before I could focus, the wind slammed the door shut. And just like that, my quiet neighborhood turned into a nightmare. Across the alley lived Arthur. He was a quiet man, kept to himself mostly. No loud parties, no wild dogs, just a man in his shed. Lisa, my neighbor, often told me about strange noises coming from Arthur's backyard, especially late at night. Not loud, but weird, rhythmic scraping, muffled thuds, like someone was working on something but not quite right. When Lisa asked Arthur about it, he'd just shrug and say he was tinkering with tools. Vague answers, nothing concrete. But the sounds kept coming, night after night, growing more unsettling. One night, the storm hit hard. The wind tore down a section of the fence between our yards. Lisa grabbed her flashlight to check the damage. That's when she saw it. The shed door slightly open, a dark stain spreading across the floor, and something sharp catching the light. She froze, heart pounding, as the wind slammed the door shut. She never told me what she saw next, but the fear in her eyes said it all. The next morning, Arthur was gone. No note, no explanation. Just vanished. The shed was locked tight, the windows covered in grime. The new tenants who moved in later found it empty. No tools, no signs of work, nothing. But Lisa and I could never shake the image of that dark stain, or the sounds that haunted the night, the scraping, the thuds, the silence that followed. I couldn't let it go. I started watching the shed, listening for any sound. At first, nothing. Days passed. Then, late at night, I heard it again, the scraping, faint but unmistakable, like nails dragging across wood. One night, I crept closer, flashlight off, heart hammering. The door was still locked, but I saw scratches on the wood, fresh and deep like someone or something was trapped inside. I asked around. No one knew where Arthur went. Some whispered he'd been hiding something terrible. Others said he was just a strange man with strange habits. But Lisa told me something chilling. The night before Arthur disappeared, she heard a voice from the shed, not Arthur's. Something low, guttural, whispering words she couldn't understand. I knew I had to see for myself. One night, I waited until the neighborhood was silent. I approached the shed, the air thick with tension. My hands trembled as I tried the door. It was unlocked. Inside, the air was cold, heavy. The floor was stained dark, the smell sharp and metallic. The tools were gone, but on the workbench lay a single object, a small, jagged piece of metal, stained red. Suddenly, a noise behind me, a scraping sound, slow and deliberate. I spun around, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. Nothing, but then from the shadows, a whisper, "You shouldn't be here." I ran. Arthur never came back. The shed was eventually torn down, but sometimes when the wind howls just right, I swear I hear that scraping again, that muffled thud. And I remember the dark stain, the glint of something sharp, and the whisper that warned me away. So, if you ever hear strange sounds coming from a shed in your neighborhood, don't ignore them, because some doors are better left closed, and some secrets are better left buried. Good night, and be careful what you listen for.